doctor's office. I went inside, waited in the waiting room for just a couple minutes, and my dad just so happens to appear at the doctor's office. My mom called him and kind of told him what was going on, and he came straight to the doctor's office and met us there. They called me back, and I remember I left my purse and everything out in the lobby with my mom. I didn't think much about it. I just left everything out there. I went in, I sat down on the exam table. My doctor came in pretty quick. And she's like, well, we're just gonna check you today. And I was 26 weeks and 6 days pregnant. So it wasn't quite time for them to start doing all those exams, but she was like, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and check you. And I remember laying back and her checking me and then just saying, you are 4 centimeters dilated and you're going to Akron. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was not what I was expecting to hear at all. She also had sat up and she said, you know, your water is bulging. You know, if it ruptures, these babies do, there's just no stopping this at all. So you really just need to take it easy. And that did not sink in at all that she had mentioned that. And so I got up off the exam table and she's like, no, I don't even want you to stand up. I want you to sit. I'm like, I really have to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm pregnant. It was a long car ride. I really have to go to the bathroom. She's like, no, I don't even want you to go to the bathroom. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I will be, you know, I'm gonna go, it'll be fine. And I think I just needed a second, and it still wasn't even setting in exactly what she had said. So I went to the bathroom and I got done and I came out and there was a nurse sitting there with a wheelchair and she's like, you're gonna sit down and you're not gonna get up again. And they were like pretty demanding on that. And my mom, she came in and she was carrying my bag and everything, and she was the doctor went out and informed her of what was going on, and the doctor was like moving at like full speed ahead. She had called the hospital because the office was right next to the hospital. She called the hospital and let them know that I was on my way over. She was arranging a flight crew or life flight crew to come to pick me up at that hospital and take me to Akron, which is where the bigger hospital was. And all this was happening, and here I am completely like just not realizing the magnitude of the situation and not realizing that something is actually happening. And I'm just going to the bathroom and just thinking that I'm going to be able to walk and everything is just going to be fine. My mom came in and she was on the phone with Brad, and Brad was gonna leave work, and I'm like, okay, that's good. And you know, the doctor's like, you know, I'm gonna finish up this stuff, I'm gonna get all this organized, and then I'm gonna be over and see you at the hospital. So in the meantime, her nurse wheeled me over to the hospital. They took me up to the labor and delivery unit, and they put me in a room and they just started hooking me up to monitors. It got like really serious, really quick. They started hooking me up to monitors. I remember my mom was giving Brad directions to the hospital. She was, you know, telling him where I was, what floor I was on, and everything. They were really working to try to get the babies on monitors. I was laying completely flat. They did not want me to be moving at all. They did not want me to, you know, be sitting up. They wanted me completely flat on my back. I remember they were just prepping me, got me in my hospital gown, and I was like, at the same time, I'm thinking like, I could probably do this all on my own. Like, I was at work this morning, but now I can't do anything, you know, like I'm completely helpless. They're taking care of everything. And my dad was still there with me, and he was actually sitting there, and when they were like trying to put the catheter in, and I'm like, this is so crazy, I'm completely helpless, like, you know, they just start doing all this stuff to me and like not even telling me what's gonna happen next. And that was, I don't know, I'll probably remember that for the rest of my life because that was just craziness. And then I remember my doctor coming in, and she was standing next to the bed, and she had just said, you know, you need to go to Akron. You know, that's the only place that they're going to be able to take care of your babies if you have them right now. She's like, you know, the worst case scenario is that you would have these babies before you get there, because this hospital isn't equipped to take care of babies born this early. So then I just started praying like, oh my goodness, like please just let me get to that hospital. I remember they pretty much had me completely prepped. That life flight crew was there so quick. I can't give you the exact amount of time because I pretty much lost track of time during all of this, but that life flight crew was there pretty quick. And I feel like I have to pause here to tell you guys a little bit of a story on top of the story. So when Brad and I first got married, my last name, I decided to hyphenate it. And I don't know, that's who I was before we were married. So I decided to hyphenate my last name. And then during that first year of marriage, you know, it got a little bit complicated, you know, when we were buying our house and they were putting the name, you know, on all the paperwork, that got a little bit complicated. When when Brad would start getting mail in my hyphenated last name, that was kind of, you know, a little, it was funny, but it was also annoying to him. So I decided 2 days before this all happened that I was going to go change my last name legally to, you know, Brad's last name. I was going to take the hyphen out. And so I went and I had ordered a new Social Security card. I changed it with Social Security. It was officially just going to be Withrow. I was laying there, and the Life Flight crew got there, and they came in and they moved me on to the bed, and it was like a scene in a movie, how this was all happening so quick. And Brad came running in his work clothes, and I remember, like, you know, he gave me a kiss. He's like, I'm gonna meet you in Akron, I will be there. Like, we seen each other for maybe like just a couple minutes at this time. I was like ready to go. My mom had told them, like, hey, her husband's in the parking lot, like don't take her yet, he's in the parking lot and he wants to see her. So, you know, just hold on 1 second. And they did, and he came running in, and I remember, like, just giving him a kiss and saying, you know, I changed my name because I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to wait till my new Social Security card came in the mail so he could just see it, and I didn't want to tell him about it when I went to do it a couple days before. So I just remember saying to him, I changed my name, you know, and I was like yelling this to him, and like, it was kind of the scene in the movie where, like, you know, like they were like prying our arms apart, and I was crying at this point because it just like all sunk in as soon as I seen him. I don't know why it was that it was like, this is very, very, very serious, and he's kind of my comfort blanket. And then for him to be like taken away like that, and he couldn't go with me in the Life Flight, that was, I don't know, it was just pretty emotional at that point. I was taken up to the rooftop, and it was all, you know, in an elevator, so you're like looking at things, like staring straight up. And they got me up onto the top of the building. They had asked me if I had ever flown, and at that point in time in my life, I had never flown. So I thought that was going to be very interesting. They got me loaded into the Life Flight, and the paramedic that was right next to me, he was probably right around my age, and I was 22 at the time, almost 23. And so he was really young, and I remember, you know, him trying to like make sure I was comfortable, make sure that we were all fastened in and ready to go. He had put like the little earmuffs on my ears. I didn't realize how loud it was going to be in there, but it was pretty loud. He also told me that he was going to hold my hand, and that if I had any contractions, that I needed to squeeze his hand. He said, you know, we had to do whatever we could do to make sure that I did not have the babies in the Life Flight, because if I had them in the Life Flight, there was just absolutely nothing that they were going to be able to do. They had no equipment to save their lives. He told me that it was only going to be like a 20-minute flight, and I just needed to hold his hand, and it was all, you know, it was all going to be okay. We just had to do our best that we could not to have them there. One of the reasons why I had to hold his hand was because he couldn't hear me talking back and forth to him. So it was kind of like a sign, like, hey, something's going on, I need your attention. So that was that. Also, I'm laying in this Life Flight. I'm laying completely on my back, and it was a very hot day, right at the end of August, and I was laying there, and they had the air conditioner on in there, and just so happens that you know, the air conditioner, I don't know what it was like dripping right in the middle of my forehead. It just kept like dripping on the middle of my forehead, and like it would run down the side of my face. And then this poor guy is over here like trying to like keep it from dripping, and then he like puts a rag up on the vent so it's not dripping on my head anymore. And so that's happening, and then, you know, we take off, and you know, we're on our way. All I can explain is that it really did just feel like I was riding in a car backwards. That's the only thing. It felt like there was definitely the bumps. There was definitely like, you know, it felt like, you know, moving all around. So there were a couple times during the flight where I would contract, and then it would release. It was just really quick, like only lasting a few seconds at a time. And I remember every time that I would squeeze his hand to let him know that I was having a contraction, like I think he was preparing for like the worst case scenario. But we got all the way to Akron, and they started taking me out of the Life Flight. Like I said, it was really hot. It was a really sunny, pretty Friday. And I remember like looking up at the sky, and it was like, I thought to myself, like, this is the last time I'm going to be outside for a really long time. I just felt that, like, I knew I was going to be on bed rest for quite a while from here on out. I didn't know when the next time I would be outside was. So I just remember looking at the sun and taking a really deep breath, like like I was going underwater. They really wanted to get accurate measurements once I got there. So they had an ultrasound ordered, and they were doing measurements. They wanted to get weights of the babies, and they wanted to, wanted to check their positioning and everything. Right around that time, Brad and my mom got to the hospital and came rushing in. They were finishing up the ultrasound, and they took me to a room, which was conveniently right next to the room where my sister gave birth a year ago in a completely different city. It was kind of crazy how that ended up happening. But they took me in my room, and they just, were letting me get settled in. It was probably late afternoon at this point, and I was just there trying to relax. I was told that I had to lay completely flat. I was not allowed to get up for anything, and I also wasn't going to be able to eat for quite a while. So, I'm just laying there kind of helpless, just trying to like calm down from all the adrenaline and all of the stuff that, had happened just earlier that afternoon. Getting settled in my room, my brother-in-law worked in Akron at the time, so he stopped in to visit, and I remember that my in-laws were going to be on their way to visit that evening, and my sister was coming from work. She left work early, and she was going to come to Akron and see me, and it was just kind of, we're just going to wait and see. We are not going to check you. We're going to hook you up to these monitors, and we just want you just to relax. That's all they wanted me to do. I had absolutely nothing with me. I went to that doctor's office in my work clothes, and I didn't have a toothbrush. I didn't have a contact case. I didn't have my glasses. I didn't have a phone charger. I didn't have a change of clothes. I didn't have anything with me at all. I didn't have a bag packed. And I remember they were like, okay, we'll just go to the store for you. We'll get all the stuff that you need. One of us will go home, and we'll get all the things that you want, and we'll bring them back to you. So we were really starting to put some plans into place. I knew that I was going to be there for the long term, and I knew, that it was going to be hard on Brad because he was still working at the time. And so we were starting to make plans that, I would just be there at all times, all week long, and then he would go to work. He'd probably stay at our house back home, and then on the weekends he'd come up and see me. And then it got a little silly because I was really emotional, and I really wanted to be I was really scared to just kind of be there by myself, completely away from all friends and all family. And they said, if you have a dog, you could bring your dog, and they could, wheel you downstairs to the courtyard, but you have to be laying down. They can take you downstairs to the courtyard, and your dog can come and visit you. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know. It made me feel so much better to know that my dog was going to be able to come visit me, that Brad was going to be able to spend the weekends with me. And my sister's like, I will come up on this day and that day. And my mom's like, and I'll come up a couple times a week and see you on bed rest. So we really started making plans that Friday night. And that all seemed to just kind of ease my fears, ease my anxieties. And I was just really starting to prepare my mind that I was going to be there for the long haul. At that time, they also put me on magnesium, and my legs completely felt like lead. I could not pick my legs up at all. I wouldn't have been able to walk even if I wanted to, but that medication made me so hot. That night, Brad, was staying at the hospital with me. He was still in his work clothes. He had a bag with him with some of his extra clothes that he had in the truck that he was able to bring with him. But he had sweatshirts on, and he had coats on, and he had blankets, and he was freezing. But I had that air conditioner turned all the way down. I had it completely as cold as it would get. That night, I also, just tried to get some sleep, but I was not able to move to my sides. My back was hurting so bad. When you're pregnant, laying on your back is just not comfortable, and then the babies aren't comfortable, because it's like they're laying on a bunch of rocks in there. And it was really hard to get restful sleep that night. I also didn't have a very nice nurse that night either. Because the babies would come off the monitors, and she'd come in and be all huffy puffy that, one of the babies would come off the monitor because they moved, and, then she'd have to reposition them. It was at that time I needed to have the monitors on at all times. The whole time during that, I do know that the baby's heart rates were good. When I was previously at the other hospital earlier that day, they did give me a steroid shot for their lungs. So it was really important that they had gotten that steroid shot, and that they had at least 24 hours to absorb that and everything before I had them. So that was the first goal, was that I would be able to keep them 24 hours after they gave me that steroid shot. That night of sleep was just super broken. I wasn't comfortable. I woke up that Saturday morning, still had nothing for myself. I was trying trying to think like, okay, you know, I'm just gonna lay here helpless until people start bringing some stuff for me. But the hospital did gather up, you know, deodorant and toothbrushes and things like that for me. I was able to like, you know, sit up for just a second to brush my teeth, because obviously like I had to be able to like, you know, spit out the toothpaste and everything. So I remember I was like gagging while I was brushing my teeth, and the nurse was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yes, like I throw up every single day while I'm brushing my teeth. And I mentioned before, I had really, really bad morning sickness pretty much the entire pregnancy. I was sick the entire pregnancy. At a minimum, I would throw up like 6 times a day with this pregnancy. It was so rough. I would get sick all times throughout the day. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the night, I was getting sick. If it was first thing in the morning, I was getting sick. If it was evening, I was getting sick. Especially when I brushed my teeth, I got sick. So I was getting sick that morning while I was brushing my teeth. I was so thankful to be able to just even sit up for a minute to take that pressure off my back a little bit. And I remember it was time to just lay back down. I couldn't have anything to eat and I couldn't have anything to drink. So at that time, I do know that my mom and my dad came back and Brad was already there, and my in-laws were coming to visit that day, that afternoon, that the doctor would be in to talk with me. And this is a doctor from maternal fetal medicine, and that he would be in to, you know, talk about, you know, what the plan was, give me the plan. So we just kind of hung around that day. Everybody was just there. I remember it was sun shining. The curtain was open in the hospital room. I was feeling so crummy as far as like, you know, not even being able to get myself ready for the day. I was uncomfortable, didn't get very good sleep. I was still so hot, so I was sweating. It was like, I just didn't feel good. Emotionally, I was starting to like just get really down and just thinking like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know. I was just getting really down. The emotions were setting in. The hormones were flared up. It was a hard morning. It definitely got harder when the doctor came in that day. I remember this doctor, I seen him once at maternal fetal medicine at the office when I had went there. And, you know, he was friendly, and he came in that day, and I just remember that he was very, very serious. So, I do believe it was my mom and Brad's mom and dad, and then Brad, that were in the room when he came in that day. I had just turned 27 weeks that day, and he started telling us what the plan was going to be, that I was going to be on bed rest as long as the babies would stay in. My water was bulging, that at the time that they checked me, I was 4 centimeters dilated, and I was not going to be able to leave until the babies were born. He also told me that we were going to set a goal of 1 week at a time, that my next goal was just to make it to 28 weeks. And then we'd set another goal after that. And then we'd set another goal after that. So with that being said, I'm like, okay, we'll set the goal for 28 weeks. He goes, it's really important that, you know, the babies stay in as long as they can, and that hopefully we can get them another round of steroid shots. At this point, I was approaching, you know, the 24 hours since I had gotten the steroid shot, so that was good, but we wanted to be able to get them another one. Then he went into the risks if the babies were born early, what the complications were going to be, and the mortality rate. He also told us the complications that they would have with like their breathing, that they probably wouldn't be able to breathe on their own. That with premature babies, they do have a lot of, health concerns after they are born. He mentioned blindness, he mentioned handicaps, like he had just said all these things, and I remember just crying. It was one of the hardest things that I had ever heard, and I just said, I'm just going to do what I have to do. That first night was really rough, and I was really emotional, and I was really scared, but I had set the determination that I was going to do whatever I had to do. I was going to lay in that bed no matter what, and I was going to do this because I did not want them to face some of the things that he was mentioning. It was really emotional for all of us in the room. I know Brad was crying. I know both of our parents were all really upset. It was really hard to hear that kind of stuff, and I started looking forward to the following week. I had said, Monday I am going to do this, and this. They told me that they could wheel me around the hallways, and I was going to be able to get a change of scenery. They told me that if I was there long enough, that they would change my room, and I wouldn't have to be in the same room at all times. I also at the time, we did not have names picked out for our babies. So that week I was going to be on a mission to start really looking at the name books and making suggestions to Brad, and he was going to be looking for names, and he was going to be telling me those, because we had no idea what we were going to name our babies leading up to this. The thought really didn't cross our mind. We were trying to prepare for everything else, and the names were a big struggle. So that was on the list for the following week. And my mom had called my employer and pretty much told them like she ain't coming back for a very long time. So that was all taken care of. My doctor from the other hospital was the sweetest lady ever, and she was calling and checking in with my mom to see how I was doing, and she was also checking in with the maternal fetal medicine doctor. So when my mom told me that she had called, it just really made me feel like I was cared about. That nursing staff at that other hospital definitely made me feel like I was a burden. They made me feel like I was crazy, that I didn't need to be checked, that I, was probably overreacting, and that was not the case at all. This was very, very serious. And I often think back, like, what if I didn't go to the doctors? What if I didn't make it there in time? What if I just would have kept waiting and waiting and waiting for that call back, and I didn't demand a doctor's office visit? What would have happened? I would have had these babies. They would have been in an area where nobody was able to take care of them because they were too small. And I just think about that all the time. So it's so important that you advocate for yourself, even when it's a hard thing and you feel like you're stepping on some toes to do it. So my sister was also still in town that day, and they had my family and everybody had stayed in a hotel that night. And they, the plan was that Saturday evening that they would all start heading home, and maybe some of them will come back on Sunday to see us. And, we were just gonna, this is where I was going to be. I remember it was evening and my in-laws had taken off. They had just head out, and I was still not able to eat, but Brad, of course, bless his heart, he was so hungry, and he would leave the room for just a minute, grab something to eat, and then come back because he didn't want to eat in front of me. So my sister, we were all getting cozy. My sister was laying on the bed with me, and it's kind of become like a family joke at this point in time. But my sister was laying on the bed with me, and she was actually like laying between my legs, and, she had her hand on my belly, and Brad was sitting in a lawn chair that he had in his truck. So, he was comfortable with his like setup over here, and my dad was so tired because bless his heart, he was working third shift at the time. So he was sleeping on the couch over here. And my mom's like, I'm going to go down to the cafeteria and get some food. And I'm like, Brad, go ahead and go with my mom. Just go with my mom, get some food, take a walk, take a break, get out and go. And my sister's like, yeah, I'll just stay with her. And he insisted that he was not going anywhere, that my mom was just going to bring him some food back to me. So I remember that my sister was laying there, and the nurse came in, and she's like, wow, you are really brave for laying right there. And my sister at the time was just like, oh, like, she's my sister. Why wouldn't I be laying right here, like between her legs and like all cuddled up with her? And the nurse was like, no, like her water is like bulging, and her water could break at like any time. And so my sister got up, and she was not going to lay there anymore. And we just kind of laughed, like, what would have happened if my water would have broke on my sister? Like, just picture that, like how crazy would have that been? So we all joke about that now. But the nurse, when she was, coming in to check on me, she did mention that the doctor would probably be in just a little bit, and that they would check me, and that if there was no further progress, that I was going to be able to eat, and I was going to be able to eat some broth. So that's super delicious. But at this time, I was hungry for anything, so that was fine with me. While I was on bed rest, I would have a couple sharp, contractions, and then they'd stop, and they'd have some contractions and they'd stop. So my longest contraction this whole entire time was only maybe 10 seconds, and then it was over with. So I didn't even really know that they were contractions, and some of them wouldn't even show up on the monitors, but that had been happening on and off for the last, over 24 hours that I was at the hospital. I just really didn't think anything else was progressing. My mom was down at the cafeteria, and I remember that, my dad was still taking his nap, and Brad, was just hanging out. My sister, she had moved so that she was not between my legs anymore, and the doctor came in, and he checked me, and he had said, oh my gosh, I remember this like it was just yesterday. He sat up, and he's like, you're 6 centimeters dilated. You were having these babies in 5 minutes. Things got so serious so quick. Brad was right there by my side. My sister was on the other side. He left the room. I really didn't know what was happening. I remember closing my eyes, and it was another one of those moments where like the room started spinning. I closed my eyes, and I was so scared. I just didn't know what to do. I was laying there completely helpless. I couldn't move. I couldn't get up. I couldn't control anything. Obviously, I laid there for over 24 hours, and I was still progressing, and oh gosh, it was completely out of my hands, and it was so scary. When they said that I was having the babies in 5 minutes, things got so serious. And I remember the doctor had left and he was going to get everything ready. I was having a C-section and the nurses all came in and they got really serious. I remember my sister had to wake my dad up and she's like, Dad, like, you know, like, wake up. This is like really serious. The poor man, he like woke up. He was so disoriented. And then he was right by the side of the bed as well. My sister was also trying to call my mom, who was in the cafeteria eating her dinner at the time. She was also calling her to let her know what was going on. And I remember we all just sat there and everybody put their heads in over top of me and we all just started praying. And the nurses were all in the background just trying to get things ready. But we were praying and praying and praying, and I was crying at this time, and it was just super scary. And the unknown was even scarier because I knew that conversation that we had had with the doctor earlier that day and how that was going. And I'm like, okay, well, I only made it to 27 weeks and all of those risk factors that he had mentioned, they are a possibility. So at this time, my mom was on her way back to the room and they told Brad that he needed to get prepped and that if he wasn't prepped, that he wasn't going to be able to sit in on the C-section. So he was doing everything he could to get ready as fast as he could. He was also still wearing some of his work clothes. So he was trying, bless his heart, he was trying to, you know, gather his thoughts and get himself ready. And then they took me out of the room. And my mom said, it's one of the funny things that my mom will say is that she was running alongside of the doctors, that she, you know, heard that these doctors were getting called. She was in the same elevator with them. She had the food in her hands that she was bringing back to Brad, and she was running down the hallway as they were, you know, as they were on their way to get me into my emergency C-section. My mom got back to the room and I was off getting prepped to have my C-section, and my poor sister and my mom were trying to dress Brad and they were trying to get him all ready. And, you know, they were like having him cover up his boots because those were the only shoes that he had with him. And he was like stripping off all his clothes and getting ready. And I was on my way there and they gave me, it must have been like some type of neutralizing drink, but they had me drink that really quick. They got me into the C-section room and it was so sterile and cold and bright. And, you know, at this point I am just completely disoriented. Like when they said I was having these babies in 5 minutes, they were serious. I was having these babies in 5 minutes and it was so quick. It was so quick how everything was happening. You know, I went from the room that I was in and I was picturing being there for the really long haul, to being completely moved into a different room, and preparing for their arrival really soon.